When the war began in Afghanistan in October of 2001, an overwhelming majority of Americans supported the cause. But nearly a dozen years later, an overwhelming majority of Americans want the U.S. out. In a recent CNN poll, only a quarter of Americans supported the war. 72% opposed it. Joining me now is New Jersey Democrat Senator Bob Menendez, who's a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you, Chuck.
All right. What do you say to a war-weary public that heard the president say last night, while we're on the verge of winding down the war, we still got a long road to go, and there's going to be some form of a military commitment in that country for years to come?
Well, I think what you did hear the president say is we are transitioning out. We've bringing our surge troops home. The Afghans will be in the lead next year, and by 2014, we will have largely transitioned out. And the long-term commitment is still to be determined in terms of what it means. But obviously, we have an interest in continuing to attack al-Qaeda. The president has effectively knocked out a significant part of its leadership. 20 of the 30 top leaders have been killed, but that doesn't mean that they're out of the picture. They're still very much engaged. So we have an interest in being able to position ourselves to use counterterrorism strikes in Afghanistan for that continuing national security. But this is fundamentally different, and it's a commitment by the president to do exactly what he said he would do: get us out in 2014 and move this from a counterinsurgency to a counterterrorism effort, which I've advocated for some time.
How tough of a sell is this going to be to Congress? Every year, I mean, one of the striking things about this agreement to forge an agreement is that the amount of aid in general, and certainly some of these security commitments, will have to be negotiated annually in Congress, and we know, that is probably going to be a lot harder than folks realize. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, certainly it will be hotly debated as to what is the right level of assistance, what is our continuing engagement. But I think it was very important for the president to lay out, and you've seen many of the Republicans actually coalesce around this point, to lay out that, in fact, for our enemies in the region, for the Taliban to know that there's still somewhat of a presence supporting the Afghans, who have over 300,000 troops between police and Afghan army, that in fact can continue to take the fight to them. Says to the Afghans, even though we are leaving in terms of the type of troops that we've had, we are still going to support you, so stand up and fight for your own country as well as against terrorism. Says to the Pakistanis in the region, hey, we're not abandoning here, so you better think about what is in your interest in this regard. Maybe you've been waiting to see whether we're going to totally abandon, and obviously we have interest in getting the Pakistanis to be more engaged as we fight the elements of al-Qaeda. So I think those are all good reasons. Those will be debated in the Congress as to what the right type of funding is. But listen, getting out after we've been spending $120 billion a year is good news for the American people.
When it comes to this issue, though, one of the caveats there has to do with stability in Afghanistan and in the Karzai government. What is the line between, if things aren't going well in Kabul, essentially, and with the Karzai government, what is the line of saying, what, we're washing our hands, we're out, versus, what, they're not ready yet to stand up, we got to stick around longer? I know that it's a little bit of a hypothetical, but what is that line in your mind?
Well, look, we have to continue to engage the Karzai government to move towards greater transparency, honesty, and democratic governance, and institutions of democratic governance. That will be part of our longer-term commitment. That will help us as well as the Afghan people. At the same time, what is number one for the United States is what is in the national interest and security of the United States, and the president will determine that as we move forward. And if in fact, it means continuing to take the fight to al-Qaeda along that region, so be it. If he believes that this is not a government for which we can continue to engage and find other ways to strike at al-Qaeda, that will be determined. But above all, I think the president's made a real commitment here that is both good for the American people, transition out, bring our sons and daughters home, stop spending $120 billion, send a message to the Afghans, you have to stand up for your own country, but at the same time, send a message to everybody else that we're not totally leaving the region.
Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat from New Jersey, and a senior member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks very much for coming on this morning.